Hello and welcome from St Peter Mencroft. I'm Fiona Haworth, the Associate Priest. This is part of our series reflecting on where we find meaning and purpose, and on Fridays our gaze is directed towards the world. We are currently living in a second lockdown, a national response to the resurgence of the coronavirus. News bulletins are filled with reports of growing numbers of infections and a mounting death toll. Hospitals in areas of the country with highest infection rates are already struggling to cope with increased demand. Non-urgent operations are being cancelled, although I suspect that for the people now no longer receiving treatment, their case feels all too urgent. And all this plays out against a backdrop of shorter days, unpredictable weather, and fears for the great religious festivals that fall at this time of year. Diwali takes place during the lockdown, which will affect our Hindu, Sikh, and Jain communities. Here, planning for Christmas services is once more put on hold. For many, uncertainties about the Christmas holidays loom large. Will people be able to gather with their wider family? Will people be able to travel to see relatives and friends? Will students be able to go home? If only limited gatherings can take place, how are difficult decisions made about who to include and who to exclude? We are experiencing a national and a global trauma. Trauma is something that can be experienced individually and collectively. And for those living through the same trauma, individual experience of it will vary greatly, depending on the past experiences of the person, the resilience they have, the community around them, and the trust felt towards those managing the response to the trauma. Research shows that the experience of trauma moves through different stages. There is the initial shock and disruption to normal patterns of life. This can result initially in a sense of shared endeavour as people work together to deal with the unfolding situation. We saw this in the response to the pandemic in March, as people across the country pulled together to support each other, to protect the NHS, and to express appreciation for the efforts of all key workers in the weekly round of applause. This is sometimes called the heroic phase. Gradually, though, this sense of shared endeavour breaks down. Trust is eroded, and people grow tired and weary, particularly when there seems no clear end in sight. Once the heroic phase passes, the experience of trauma enters the disillusionment phase. Relationships break down and people start looking for others to blame. We have seen this in the news reports of young people out partying, or the images of crowded streets after pubs have emptied. We enter this new lockdown already firmly in the disillusionment phase. And it does not help that the nights are drawing in and the weather worsening. The health benefits of being out in the natural world seem less attractive on gloomy, wet, cold days, although venturing outside is still beneficial. And whilst many are committed to doing what they can to support the national effort, there is a sense of frustration, anger, and despair in many parts of society. If we are to move beyond this to the reconstruction phase, we need to be open and honest about where we are. We need to recognise our own struggles and the struggles of our communities. We need to be compassionate with ourselves if we are to be compassionate towards others. Life feels difficult and complicated and very uncertain. And it is okay to feel angry, anxious, sad, despairing, frustrated, lonely, afraid. It would be very strange if we did not feel all at sea and unsure of the world right now. Difficult emotions are a natural response to where we find ourselves. It is also likely that we may experience physical symptoms alongside our emotional response. We may feel heavy, tense, exhausted, hyper-alert to perceived threats or slights, much more reactive and jumpier than we are in calmer times. All of these are normal responses to situations that threaten and disorientate us. It is the job of our brains to constantly scan our physical and social environment and ask, am I safe? If the message comes back that we are not safe, the body is flooded with stress hormones to help us take flight or defend ourselves, which override the rational part of our brain. Think of the video clips of cats surprised by cucumbers which their owners have sneakily placed behind them. When cats notice the cucumbers, which they presumably think are snakes, the cats leap into the air and flee. Do Google cats and cucumbers if you need some light relief. More seriously, often this experience of threat takes away our ability to speak, to explain how we are feeling. We can become lost for words. If there seems to be nothing we can do to move out of the situation that is threatening us, the body tries to switch off the stress response, but this can leave us feeling disconnected with ourselves and with those around us. We can get stuck in either a flight response, feeling anxious and panicky, or in a fight response, feeling irritated and angry. The news bulletins tell this story on a worldwide scale. What is needed to help people recover from traumatic experiences is being held in a caring presence, either a person or a community. For so many, this is what we are denied right now. But there are things that we can do to care for ourselves and for those around us. We can, of course, follow the government guidelines and continue to do the things that will mitigate our and other people's risks. We can wash our hands thoroughly, wear a mask, keep a 2-meter distance from those around us, work from home where we can. Caring for ourselves is perhaps harder, but there are things we can do. We can learn to listen to our bodies and pay attention to what we are feeling. It may be hard to put this into words, but noticing that our stomach or chest feels tight, our breathing is shallow, our heart is racing, our hands are clenched, can help to put us in touch with our feelings and so act to help them. Even the simple act of noticing and naming what is happening can help us feel better. Saying, "My shoulders feel tense," allows us to try relaxing them. It might be that we need to take a walk or sit quietly and consciously scan our body, starting with our feet, and relax each muscle block in turn. We may need to do something creative. Make a cake, paint a picture, read a book. Perhaps we need to ring a friend and have a chat. Say to them, "I've noticed that I feel really tense. What do you do when you feel like this?" Sharing with someone, even at a physical distance, can help to ease us. We are living, as so many have before us, in a time of profound uncertainty. In the Bible, we find many stories of people living through trauma, slavery, conflict, illness, exile. There are rich resources to help us. Many of the Psalms speak of this experience of living through change and disillusionment and contain heartfelt cries to God to come and act on behalf of God's people. We might want to model our own prayers on the prayers in the Psalms. And perhaps the most important thing we can do as we live through this second enforced period of restriction and restraint is to be kind to ourselves and to each other. Loving God, through Jesus, you know what it is to live with oppression and violence. In Jesus, you have known the agony of betrayal, suffering, loss, and death. Help us to look to Jesus in our own struggles and to learn from his compassion. God, in your kindness, help us to be kind to ourselves and to each other, that together we may journey through this present darkness and build a new and kinder society when these times pass. Amen.